Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where men share ideas to manage money, the home, and a life full of experiences with our partners. Well, welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where we share ideas to manage money and the home as a couple and live a life full of experiences. Today, we have on world expert, Dr. Ashley Whillans. She is currently a tenure track faculty member at the Harvard Business School and holds a PhD in social psychology. In 2015 and in 2018, she was named a Rising Star of Behavioral Science by the International Behavioral Exchange and Behavior Science and Policy Association. Her first book, Time Smart: How to Reclaim Your Time and Live a Happier Life, was published in October of 2020 by Harvard Business Publishing, and among other accolades, was named one of the top 10 business books of 2020 by the Globe and Mail. We will get to Dr. Whillans soon. She is amazing. You're going to love listening to all of her very practical and helpful tips on how to manage time, money, and money with your partner in a way where you can live happier together. But before we do that, I have a prompt that I'm going to ask Dr. Ross, and it's something I encourage all of you as listeners to consider. So here it is. As always, Dr. Ross and Christian, our co-hosts, are joining us today. And Dr. Ross,
lay it on me.
If you had the opportunity right now, how old are you, Dr. Ross?
I am 34.
34. Okay. So as a 34-year-old, if you had the opportunity to switch places with Warren Buffett, and for those of you who are unaware, he is worth about $100 billion. So if you had the opportunity to switch places right now with Warren Buffett, his life for yours, would you do it? Why or why not?
Right now, yeah. It's funny as you asked that. Like I got a little chest I'm like, woo, $100 billion. Like
I don't even know what you would do with $100 billion.
I know. I mean,
well, you give it away. That's what he's doing.
I know he's giving it away to the different charities and such. I mean, there's no way you could spend that in a lifetime.
You could have 2 file cabinets behind you.
And, yeah, I could have 2. Yeah, I actually have one right over there, so I already have 2. I'm good. No, there's yeah, I mean, I think that's like gut reaction, but you said right now, right? Yeah. So Warren Buffett right now. And so then I'm thinking, okay, well, that's exchanging $100 billion for decades of my life.
How old is Warren Buffett?
I think he's 90 right now.
Yeah. Okay. And so, and I mean, only probably a few, I mean, hopefully he's in good health, but I don't know his current status, but hopefully he has, several more years to keep living. But so no, like, I don't think there's any amount of money that I would change, that I would trade decades of my future life for.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, Christian?
I mean, for the sake of controversy, I really want to stir it up with Dr. Ross. Okay. Let me add a wrinkle. Do I get to keep any of my relationships?
Nope.
Oh no, I'm keeping my yeah.
Because we're keeping our partners.
Yeah, for sure. That's the best part of my life. So yeah, no question. Plus the time, the love, all the love, between now and whenever I turn 90. That's trillions of dollars, untold value for me, along with the time. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, I feel like that every time that question is posed around me, everybody has the same reaction that Dr. Ross had initially, where it's like, wow, $100 billion. And then they realize,
like winning the lottery.
Wow. Yeah, right. Yeah. 100 times over, right?
Yeah, 100 times.
But you realize, like, wow, time truly is priceless. And, that's something where I kind of take a step back and look at my life and the experiences that I've had, as a father and in my married life. If I have any regrets, it's that I probably worked way too much, and that I didn't take advantage of the precious time that I had strategically enough, because ultimately, like if you approach, or at least if from my perspective, if I would have approached managing my time with the same type of attitude and veracity that I did managing my money, then I feel like that I would have been a heck of a lot happier. And I was really excited that Dr. Whillans would join us today, because she is just full of so much wisdom and so many strategies to figure out how we can make the most of the little time that we have together and become the happiest with that time. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Dr. Whillans. This podcast is brought to you by Modern Husbands. We are a community of devoted husbands of working spouses who share ideas to manage money, the house, and a life full of experiences. Visit modernhusbands.com to learn more. All right, Dr. Whillans, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We want to start by just learning why you are so passionate about being an expert on time and happiness. Where does it come from?
So I am a research nerd. I've always just really been fascinated by the psychological study of people, just understanding people's motivations, why they behave the way they behave. And in college, I became really fascinated by the scientific study of happiness. So I ended up doing a lot of research in what became my advisor's lab, was done at the University of British Columbia. And her whole research is really focused on the fact that we don't always spend money in ways that will make us happy. So we spend too much on material purchases, like clothes that we never wear, and not enough on experiences. I hope that's changing. I think it's changing a little bit. But we don't spend enough money on other people, and we focus too much on spending money on ourselves. And so out of all of these conversations that all of us, ourselves included, don't spend money in ways that promote happiness, we became fascinated about whether people don't necessarily spend time in ways that promote happiness too. So my interest in this topic between time and happiness really started from really like a purely academic pursuit, just really interested in trying to collect data and run studies on the relationship between time, money, and happiness, because it's a really fascinating area of study. However, it took a personal turn for me when I started my job at HBS in 2017.
For our listeners, what is HBS?
Oh, Harvard Business School. So I'm an assistant professor at the Harvard Business School. I graduated from the University of British Columbia with a PhD in social psychology. And I got this big job totally unexpectedly in 2017. And up to that point, I was already working really hard, publishing lots of papers, in part because I was so passionate about the topics that I was studying. Yet when I moved across the continent to start this job, the partner that I had been dating for 10 years moved with me, but was absolutely miserable. And this is because I wasn't investing any time in the relationship. They basically felt like there was nothing for them in this new city. I saw it as a big opportunity, and they saw it as almost like their life was disappearing in front of them. And I wasn't as good of enough reason to stay because I wasn't investing any time in that relationship. And yet, meanwhile, I was giving all these talks around the world about how important it is to put time first in your relationships. And I personally destroyed a relationship of 10 years because I always was prioritizing work and never prioritizing my relationships. Yet I did a PhD on time, money trade-offs and happiness. Like studying time was my profession, right? So if I was struggling so much, I must not be the only one, especially given that I knew all the data and yet was still having a hard time putting it into practice in my own life. And so in 2020, I wrote a book called Time Smart: How to Reclaim Time and Live a Happier Life. And my impetus for doing that was to provide research-based strategies that are relatively simple that we can all do regardless of how much money we have in the bank or how much that we work on a regular basis, what our life situation is, out of really this need or desire in my own life to really start living what I was studying. I will say now that I'm happily married, I have a kid, a house, we both have busy jobs, which is something I'm sure we'll talk about later. But I do really feel like my priorities have shifted in life such that my relationships are really the most important thing and everything else comes second. So I've really tried to make that mental shift in my own life. But really, that's how I became so passionate. I was always passionate about the data, but I became passionate about this topic personally, starting when I started my job at around 5 years ago.
We've talked about, Christian and I have talked about this, and I've talked about it with friends, and I'm guilty of doing the same thing. For pretty early on in our marriage, just my head was down, constantly working. And I have to wonder, and maybe I'm hopeful you know the answer, or at least have, some sort of sense of like this point where you are in your life and I am in my life, and Christian is wise beyond his years. He's at this point where we feel like that we've maybe accomplished enough professionally where now we can shift our focus to our more, personal things, our relationships. And do you think a possibility?
Yeah, so there is some in my data, there is some research suggesting when I ask people, are you more likely to value time over money? So would you rather have more leisure than more money in the bank? That a lot of these preferences are driven by your feeling of security, right? So your feelings of financial optimism. Actually, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank because it's really a subjective, a psychological feeling that's driving these time and money trade-offs. So you could have $10 million in the bank, but if you don't feel secure about your finances in the next 5 years, then you could still continue to like focus on money and on the next investment, on the next deal. But there are some people I think that at some point feel like this is good. I feel secure. If I lost this job, I feel like I could go get another one. I'm confident in my skills, my abilities. I have a lot of experience now, or I just trust myself more. And anything that makes people feel confident, I see in my data, and more secure, more optimistic about the future. Whatever that is for people, it's going to look different for different people. But when you have this overall sense of confidence in your life, that does predict whether you feel like you can prioritize time, leisure, family, relationships, or whether you should really be putting your head down and really focusing on money and financial success.
I think Aunt May in the Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire from the early, I think it was the aughts or something. Anyway, Aunt May said something to Peter Parker about how, genius is messy, right? So he had this messy room and bad handwriting. He was just all over the place as an adolescent. But look, he became Spider-Man. So Dr. Whillans, when you were taking on this big job and you and maybe you weren't spending as much time with your partner at the time, that was just your messy Peter Parker phase. But now look at you, you're swinging from rooftops, you're saving all kinds of folks who need help, including me and Brian, truly helpless individuals. So that's really good to hear too, because I'm looking down at my notebook and I'm looking at some serious chicken scratch. So there's hope for me yet.
I think it's actually something, this idea of looking on the outside of people's lives. I feel like time affluence, like anything we're trying to cultivate in our life, is something you have to work on an everyday basis. So I often make kind of analogies between feeling in control of your time and making time to do all the things that you want to do and have to do in life. It's sort of the same psychological processes as becoming more physically fit. So even if you're a somewhat fit person, if you stop going to the gym, or you start eating Big Macs 3 times a week, 4 times a week, your fitness can fade. I think even with time affluence, time control, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, you feel like you're totally time poor, like you have way too many things to do and not enough time to do them, or you feel really time affluent, like I'm one of these time millionaires that we've been reading so much about, and I feel totally in control of my time. It's actually an active choice every day that we have to make sure that we wake up And the first thing that we do is to do something for ourselves, invest in our social relationships, not give away that precious time to an obligation or to something we don't actually want to do, or that we don't start filling all of our future calendar with a whole bunch of professional obligations, even if we're really excited about them, because we know that that's going to not leave enough time for these other things that are really important to us. So I argue and really do think about this from a personal perspective, that time affluence is a habit. It's something that we have to show up and make time for ourselves and for the people that we love every single day, even if sometimes that only looks like a 30-minute walk around the block, if fitness is something that matters to you, or it's spending 10 more minutes with your partner instead of racing off to your home office to get a few work emails done before they head off to work. Even if investing in the things you care about some busy days only looks like 10 minutes, those 10 minutes probably were still a choice where you decided that whatever it is, either investing in myself or investing in my relationships, that was more important than doing something that you felt like was maybe more quote unquote productive.
Makes a lot of sense. I know we're going to get more into
maybe I'm jumping the gun here.
No, this is great. This is perfect. Let's switch gears really quickly. Can you tell us an interesting fact about you that most people might not know?
I see that I was prompted in an email to talk a little bit about my past career. So I was first a professional actor before I became an academic. And I do think I am the only current HBS faculty, Harvard Business School faculty, with an IMDb page. And although I was trying to be a very, very serious actor at the time, like, I mean it, I was, doing method acting classes, and I went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London for a period of time. I was trying to be taken very seriously. I am very humbled by the fact that the most significant thing I ever did was a 1-second part in the hit movie Juno, where Polly Bleeker says, "Your little girlfriend gave me the stink eye in art class yesterday. And then Elliot Page says, "That's not my girlfriend. That's just the way her face," or sorry, I'm getting this wrong. So anyway, Elliot Page's character and like Polly Bleeker boyfriend in Juno, they have this hallway interaction, and Elliot Page's character says, "Your little girlfriend gave me the stink eye in art class yesterday." And Polly Bleeker says, "That's not my girlfriend. That's just the way her face looks. That's just her face." And then it cuts to my stink face. And that is the most significant contribution I ever made in my acting career. And I am very happy to report I am no longer an actor since that was the pinnacle of my career.
You know that you're a GIF. That's a GIF.
I know.
You're giving the stink eye.
Know.
Yeah.
I have to show that before in the introduction slides of every class I teach. Otherwise, students bring it to me as if I didn't know it existed. So I always have to just get in front of that and say, "And if you make a dumb comment in class, I will make this face. So please don't make me make this face." And then I just move on.
That is
good. And then
good.
I get all these shocked faces. They're like, "Whoa, I didn't think that. I wasn't sure if that was the same Professor Whillans. Is that the same one? Oh, it's the same person. Google didn't lead me astray."
Well, we would love to talk to you about, in part, just the relationship that you have with your husband. And men who are devoted husbands married to working spouses, they share ideas to manage money, the house, experiences. Those are modern husbands. And you have a husband who's very successful. You have a child. Can you perhaps share a little bit about, how you all have like a division of labor at home, as an example? Like, you're both very successful and you're still able to kind of do it all. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know how you do it.
Yeah, so I think I try to use data to like inform some of the decisions that we make, probably like unsurprisingly given my job, right? So my husband is an emergency room physician. I'm a professor. So we do have both these very like time greedy jobs, as the research literature calls them, right? I think the nice thing that protects us somewhat is that our jobs are quite flexible. He works shifts, but when he's not at the hospital, he's not on call. And I can plan around that. And similarly, I usually know my conference schedule, which is one of the harder parts of my job now that people are, travel has come back post-COVID, is that I sometimes have to travel, and sometimes for long periods of time for my job. That might be for a conference, it might be for case interviews or executive education teaching. For example, I might go to Qatar for a week in January, and that's all great opportunity for me, but it obviously can put a lot of stress on our household, especially given that we have a young daughter who's 10 months old and we don't have family that lives nearby. So we are the sort of sole providers childcare wise after hours for our daughter. And so what that means is we do a lot of long-term strategic planning. My husband did go up in hours after my daughter was born. So he works 17 or 18 shifts a month. With ER, he's always on a different kind of schedule week over week. So sometimes he'll work 7 to 3, sometimes he'll work 11 p.m. at night. Christian, I know that you're familiar with this. He'll work 11 p.m. at night to 7 in the morning for 3 straight days. And so his schedule, although it doesn't sound like a lot of days, maybe, is he has to account for jet lag almost. You can think of it as when he's trying to roll over his shifts and go from evening schedule to day schedule and back. So he's a shift worker, so he's constantly moving between time zones, if you will. It's like a way to think about it. And so we have a lot of planning meetings, and there's actually research showing that couples who have like 1 hour, almost like business meetings with their partner every week are happier. And we try to do that almost on a daily basis. We'll kind of look at our schedules, talk about who's going to do the morning feed, who's going to do the evening feed, so who's going to do the pickup, who's going to do the drop off. And those kinds of decisions in our relationship, given our time flexibility, but also our busy schedules, are something that aren't fixed. I think you can, and that if they do start to become fixed, we reevaluate on a weekly basis. So for a very concrete example, I'm more of a morning person, and I usually do the really early morning feed with my daughter. However, when I'm doing that constantly, because she gets up early at 6 a.m., that can make me really tired. So if we never talked about it and we treated that decision as fixed, we might never have like an ongoing conversation about how I'm getting really tired because he's getting a couple more hours of sleep than me on a day that he's off and not going to the hospital early. So I think having those weekly meetings and really using them to surface scheduling, both short-term and long-term planning, is something that my husband do a lot of. So we're almost like constantly negotiating. It's something else that I think I take from my negotiations world. So I taught negotiations at Harvard Business School for a few years. When I started on faculty, I'm in a different course now that's closer to my happiness research. But when I was teaching myself negotiations as I was teaching students, no pressure. But one concept that I became really interested in applying in my own personal life is this idea of trading on differences. So instead of trying to like split all of your chores equally, you decide who likes doing which chore more. And one person does all of that chore and the other person does none of that chore or less of that chore. And my husband and I do this all the time, but it's not just like what we like more. It's like, who cares more about that thing getting done in a particular way? So my husband might be really particular about a certain set of dishes. So we trade on differences there. So he's like, I want to do these certain set of dishes like pots because I really care about this being done a certain way. And even though I know you can do them, if I didn't do them, I feel like maybe they weren't done the way I wanted them. It's like almost just like a feeling of control thing, right? And so I'm like, great, you can do the pots and I'll do the bottles and I'll do the loading of the dishwasher. And so we start trading on differences of like who enjoys what more and who's better at what. And then also who cares more about X thing, so that I'm not doing a task that my husband cares a lot about that he ends up redoing because I didn't do it in the exact way that he wanted it. It's usually that way in our relationship where I'm like kind of the one that doesn't really care. I'm like, I am truly the messy room person, Christian, in your example. I'm like, I probably would, when left to my own devices, the house would be a lot messier than it is now. So that's also something that we do on a regular basis. We try to strategize. And then a couple of other things I think in our relationship from my research that we take seriously is outsourcing. So if we know we're going to have a busy week, like a busy month, like this month was really busy. My husband's working a bunch. I have a ton of work deadlines. But because we had a planning meeting, or we have planning meetings all the time, every week or almost every evening, we have a short one. And then on the weekends, when we're both off, we do a longer one. We knew going into this month that it was going to feel really stressful. My research shows that time-saving purchases like meal delivery, house cleaning, work even better for relationship satisfaction in busy periods of time. So like they're generally pretty good for relationship satisfaction. They're even better for relationship satisfaction when you're having a stressful time, like you're working a lot of hours, when that stress is being driven by something controllable. Interestingly, side point, when stress is being driven by something you can't control, like maybe bad news, someone's not doing well health-wise in your family, the best thing you can do for your relationship is an experience. Go for a nice dinner, go to a movie, because you're completely distracting yourself from a problem you can't solve. But when the problem in your relationship is something you can solve, it's a lot of work hours, it's something you knew about, kind of my research suggests throw a little bit more money at the problem. So we knew going into this month that it was going to be hectic. So we hired babysitters for a couple of weekends. We don't usually do that, but we're like, we probably just need some time to hang out, watch TV, and recover from our busy schedules. So we hired childcare for a couple of weekends this month in advance, knowing that we were going to have a super hectic time. Something else that we did is we threw our budget out the window when it came to food this month. We're like, okay, we usually try to cook as much as we can to save money because it's like a little healthier. And this month we were like, okay, let's just do the best we can. If we can make eggs and rice sometimes, great. If we need to just order Thai food for a week, fine. So we just were a little bit nicer to ourselves this month because we knew that we were going to have a busy time and that cooking might be the last thing we had energy or time for. And a lot of couples that I've studied do like meal delivery, and I tell them to do that, especially in months where they know they're going to be busy. You might not want to do it all the time. You might not be able to afford it. You might get bored of it. Do it, particularly save it for months you know that you and your partner are going to be busy. So I think I think about this a lot, but I think our key kind of like ways that we manage is we're very lucky to have flexibility. So, I think that's something that in your relationship, if you can think about trying to find a job with at least some flexibility. I think this is why remote work and hybrid work is here to stay, because sometimes we just need to have a doctor's appointment for a kid in the middle of the day, and having at least one partner with some flexibility, as long as you have a conversation about how the other partner is going to help you like get a few hours of work in later that evening to make up for the hours you lost during the day, is really key. So we have flexibility. We have daily and weekly conversations. We try to trade on differences and think really strategically about chores, who's doing what, why, and we revisit that on a regular basis to make sure that one of us isn't getting too tired or too frustrated by the tasks that we find ourselves doing on a regular basis. So we don't harbor any unspoken resentment. My ex and I used to do that a lot. We just wouldn't talk about our frustrations. And I think that contributed in part to why he was so unhappy in our relationship for such a long time. And I really didn't know until he moved home after like 3 weeks of living in Boston, and I found out. So we surface a lot of our frustrations on a regular basis of just about daily stuff, which can kind of build up. And then we throw money at the problem of some of our chores and childcare, especially in busy months.
And when you say throw money, so it's really, like home delivery services and childcare. I don't know if you have a yard, but hiring somebody to mow.
Oh, we do have a yard. We wish we didn't. If we move again, we're going to try to find the least amount of lawn and go for that one, like whatever that is.
You were talking earlier about, kind of this idea that, when you feel really good about yourself and confident, then now because of that, it changes your happiness, and you can, I guess it'd be paradoxically spend less time at work because you feel good about yourself and you can devote more time to your relationships. Are there any specific things that your husband does for you that, kind of makes you feel really good about your career successes and what you really need to continue to achieve?
I think, I mean, he's actually one thing that I love about our relationship. He's such a good strategic planner. Like he's way more strategic than I ever was. People ask me like, oh, what did you do to get your job or get your PhD? I'm like, follow what I like doing. Like I was never very like strategic about anything. I was really happy to like not be a professor or not. Like I'm kind of open-minded and one of these sort of like go with the flow kind of people. And what I really appreciate and what really helps me in feeling confident about my career and the trajectory I'm going is just being able to have my husband be like a sounding board for strategic decisions. I think that is really awesome and not kind of ever something I was thinking I would like have out of a relationship. Like I usually I pretty much separate work and personal. And it's really nice to have a partner that's like, oh, like I can just like run by a decision, like, oh, should I like put more time into this paper or more time into this, and like talk through like the trade-offs of one decision versus another. And he's really good at that. So I think that's great. I think also just there's no guilt at all. Like I'm never made to feel like in my first relationship, I felt like I would sometimes almost even withhold like opportunities to my partner until they were really close to happening. Like I always knew I was going to do it, but I never wanted to like bring them along that conversation because I always felt guilty about it, like guilty about my career success or guilty about the opportunity and me wanting to do it. Like I was made to feel bad about doing it.
Why? Why is that?
I don't know, like because it would be time away, because maybe it seems unnecessary. Like in my profession, it's very hard to ascertain, like it's not like a sales job where I'm like, I need to fly to X place to meet with this client to close this deal, which costs X amount of dollars. In my job, it's like, I need to go to this conference, which may or may not help me network with people who may or may not write me letters, which may or may not get me promoted 10 years from now. It's very hard sometimes in my profession because it's not as concrete. It is one of these more creative kind of like relationship-y type jobs where it's sometimes hard to justify if I need to go be away for a period of time, like why it's so important. Like I feel I might want to do something or feel like it's important, but it doesn't have that like tangible outcome attached to it as something like sales does, where it's super concrete why you need to, you run this client, like, and you're the one responsible for getting X amount of money from this client, so you must go. It's not as clear cut in my job. And so I think that can be difficult to navigate, honestly, in just in my life in general, like really thinking what is the utmost important thing to do or to like where to be. And that's part of the ambiguity of being a research professor. And it's, part of like, you figuring that out as part of how you are or not successful in this career is just where you should be spending your time, because there's no roadmap. It's like being a CEO of knowledge in some way. No, there's no one to kind of like tell you the best path. And so I think in my current relationship, what's really nice is if I'm like, I'm going to go do X thing for these reasons, my partner never asks questions. He's like, great, that sounds great. And I remember when we were first dating, I kind of gave a bit of a litmus test. I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Switzerland for this conference. Like, and we were only dating for like 4 weeks. And I was like, would you want to come? And the conference was for like 6 months. I was like, how cool is this guy with my crazy life? Like, and he was like, oh, that sounds great. And like, he went, he had a great time. Like, I don't know, we were like really in love at that point anyway, but he was willing to like, like play along with like the kind of cool, but also weird parts of my job. And he just never makes me feel bad or guilty about it. And I think that's so healthy in relationships in general, like to be a truly supportive partner. If your partner says that they really want to do something for XYZ reasons, and it makes sense, and that you just support their decision, like no questions asked. Like if your partner wants to change jobs, like even in our relationship, my partner was working this higher paying job, hated it. It was like the quintessential soul sucking job of just like the worst hospital with like the worst people. And we played a little bit of like time money trade-off game from my research. Like how much is that, like those additional dollars worth in terms of your happiness in life? And we kind of were like, not worth it. And he was like, I think I need to like quit that job. And I was like, you should definitely quit that job. And then he's like, the only job he could get was like part-time at a nonprofit. And I was like, great, like you should do that. It will make you much happier. And like, so he did that for like a few years, and now he's full-time again. But that's the kind of like, just kind of support that I think makes a good relationship. Is really trying to help that other person live the best version of their life and support them in any way that you can.
So awesome. So you've been able to help your husband as well as you and your husband as a team sort of hack time on, I'm sure, countless occasions. What are some time hacks that couples should know? Maybe 2, 3 other time hacks.
Yeah, so some additional stuff I haven't talked about is watch how much time you're spending researching on purchases that cost less than $100. We like to maximize things that we can measure. So this is known as like maximizing measured mediums, like points and dollars saved. But what actually ends up happening is that the average consumer in the US spends 3 to 5 hours researching for consumer deals of purchases that are cost less than $100. And I've noticed this in our relationship too, right? Sometimes we're like searching on Amazon for, I don't know, onesies for our daughter. And we're like, well, like, which ones are better? Like these $16.95 ones or these $12.95 ones? And we like have this like long discussion about like, well, are we having a quality price trade-off? It's like, let's be real. Our daughter doesn't care. Like quality sucks probably for both of them. Like she's only going to wear it for 2 months. So I think trying to satisfy, I just saw a whole Twitter like conversation about this and I was like, yes. And this like person who tweeted it got like 5,000 retweets about all the things you can do to time hack. And this was one of the ones that they said, and it's also something I advocate for, is like notice when you're researching small consumer purchases and ask yourself, do you really want to be spending that quality time that you have together doing that? Or do you want to be just watching TV or going for a walk, doing something else?
Yeah, it strikes me. So Prime Day just passed, you know, the big Amazon like sale event of the year. Like thinking about all the productivity lost by people searching around on Amazon trying
to kills me.
I mean, just relative to the amount that they would save on whatever it is that they purchased on Prime Day, it makes your head spin. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I know it does. I know. And so we still do it sometimes because it's like habit. It's like a good habit. It's like a financial habit that's good, kind of, but it also can eat into your time a lot. So it's like, pick your battles when it comes to like saving a few pennies here and there. Because I've noticed it can really eat into our quality time. And then 2, coming out of some new data that I've been analyzing for a paper, we see, in speaking of quality time, we see that the most important predictors of quality time in relationships are literally doing anything that make you feel positive in the moment and supported by your partner. So we threw 1,000 things at this like model trying to predict like what is quality time in relationships. We're like, is it leisure? Is it doing X activity? Is it watching less TV? Is it doing what's outside? And like, the only thing that matters is like whatever you're doing, you feel positive. We also see some evidence for feeling present in the moment and you feel supported. So I would encourage everyone, and we're trying to do this too, of like almost have a discussion or try to notice when you have those feelings in your relationship and just try to do whatever activity it is or make time for that more. So maybe that means not being on your phone when you're spending leisure time together at night so that you can be really present with your partner. Because I was really surprised that it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Literally just matters how you feel in those moments.
For me and Chelsea, it is partner workouts.
Yeah.
love a partner workout. I haven't thought about it in this framework, but I always believe those. It's almost like the workout was better because you had somebody cheering you on. You felt supported. You felt positive, like you're moving forward together. Now I know a little bit about why. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
I love that because you're also accomplishing like personally important goals together. I love that example of our data. I think that's exactly the kind of experience that you want to try to maximize with your partner to the extent that you can.
Hope and I do that as well. We work out together at Orange Theory, and now it's all, we're connecting the dots here. Is there a time hack that you would recommend for parents? One that really sticks out?
I'm trying to think of ones that I haven't covered. I think the guilt thing is really real for parents. Like you're guilty about letting your kid watch TV so you can like shower in the morning, or you're guilty about dropping your kid off at an extra day of daycare, or you feel guilty about not doing enough cool things with your kids. I know these are all things that come up for me, and I really try to be self-compassionate. Anytime I feel like one of those feelings are coming up, I'm like, no, girl, you're doing great. Or anytime that my husband will be worrying about something about our daughter, we're like, no, we're doing a great job and we deserve a date night. Like it's totally good to have a babysitter sometimes too. Like we need to be also present for us before we can be present for a kid. And so I think especially for parents, it's so easy to get caught up in comparisons of your own ideal version of yourself as a parent, but also what you see other parents doing on social media, of feeding your kids all of these different kinds of foods that you somehow magically home cook 4 times a day, or going on all of these trips, taking your baby on an African safari, and like the most you've ever done is, gotten on a plane to visit your in-laws. Like, I think there is a lot of pressure on working parents to have this, like, to live up to some own internal ideal and also to live up to these external ideals. And I think trying to just be, again, present, or focusing on all of the positives and being, almost engaging in like positive nostalgia too. So one thing, we'll like always look at photos. We try to take a lot of photos and we'll look back at them together. It serves as a reminder of the great job that you're doing and the fact that your kid is living their best life, and you're doing enough. You're enough. And so I think trying to focus on the positives and engaging in a healthy amount of self-compassion, to use a word from the psych literature, is something I try to make a regular practice. Like anytime I find myself gravitating towards like, why aren't I on an African safari with my 10-month-old? I'm like, that's probably not as fun as that looks. And you're doing a great job.
That actually sounds terrifying.
Instagram makes it look so good somehow. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Look at this cool safari hat.
It only took 1,000 video reels to get to this one 5-second clip of enjoyment. Yes.
Dodging dangerous snakes and wild animals with your child. You mentioned, and we've talked about this before because I love this research that you did, this one question. You mentioned going on a date. So if you and your husband go on a date, because you were given a choice of 2 gift cards, and one gift card is $200 to go to a really nice restaurant, and another is a $50 gift card to go to like casual dining, but you're going to have a $150 cleaning service take care of your place while you're at dinner. Which do you take and why?
Second, easily, and I'll tell you why. So the house cleaning service is doing a couple of things. First, you don't have to clean your house before you go out, so you can just enjoy time with your partner. During the dinner, you're going to be present more because you're not thinking about what your house is going to look like after, or about when you're going to get those chores done. I'm assuming you're probably going to this nice dinner on the weekend when you have a little bit more free time. So when you're at dinner, you're not like talking about chores and discussing who's going to do what tomorrow. And then when you come back from dinner, you get that sense of like goal completion, because not only did you have a great date night, your house is now also clean because you made that smart decision to hire a house cleaner. And so you're just winning both in the anticipation, in the moment, and after the fact. And honestly, there's research showing that you can't really tell that much of a difference, at least when it comes to wine, between the $50 and the $200 bottle. People tell themselves they can totally tell the difference once they know the price, but if they don't know the price, they're unless they're wine connoisseurs, they're kind of guessing at 50-50. And the actual experience, you should go to a nice fancy meal every once in a while, but really what the value is, I think, is that you're getting some time to just spend with your partner. Who cares what you're eating, as long as you're spending some time hanging out, having a couple of drinks and enjoying yourself. And what better way to enjoy yourself by knowing your house will also be clean when you return.
Love it. Now we're trying to be conscious of time here. It's actually, I feel like I'm under pressure because you're such an expert. So I keep looking at the clock. We want to finish with some rapid fire questions.
Oh yeah, cool. Let's do it.
So Christian, are you ready? You want to serve them up?
Ready. Okay, Dr. Whillans, possessions or experiences?
Experiences.
Android, iPhone, or no phone at all?
iPhone. I guess I should say no phone at all, but I'm addicted to my phone. It's a time suck in my life.
As long as you're not doom scrolling through people's Safari
Try not
photos.
to. I try not to doom scroll.
Although you could do that on any device, really, right? Okay, Instagram or old-fashioned photo albums?
Photo albums.
Camera phone or camera?
Camera phone.
Hiking in the mountains or walking on the beach?
Hiking in the mountains.
Reading a book or watching TV?
TV. I have to read so much for work.
Subscribing to the Modern Husbands podcast or doing some other silly activity with another podcast?
Obviously, subscribing to the Modern Husbands podcast.
And what a great segue, Dr. Whillans. We so appreciate your time today. If you are listening, you can subscribe to our podcast anywhere where you find podcasts, and you can go to modernhusbands.com to also find it, and as well as finding ideas to manage money, manage your life full of experiences with your partner, and to dive into some merchandise that will bring a smile to your face. Again, Dr. Whillans, thank you for your time today. So many nuggets of wisdom for our listeners.
It was so great chatting with both of you. Thank you for reaching out.
A big thanks from Dr. Ross, Christian, and myself to today's guest, and of course, our listeners. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to today's podcast. You can find our podcast on modernhusbands.com or anywhere you download your podcasts.